I think Dan and his team, Dan obviously has a big understanding of the industry and the financial aspects of the industry as well. He has such great knowledge of what you can do to improve your business and what you can do when it's time to exit your business and how to get the most out of that. My father purchased the business in 1977, and I joined him in 1990. I went into computerized books and never left because I love the customer service aspects of the business. I ended up purchasing the business from him in 2011. So PCO Bookkeepers did my accounting. And I went to them to do my accounting because I heard Dan Gordon speak at a bunch of different industry events. My father was an accountant by education, and so he was more of a CFO. And so we did things his way. After I purchased the business and he passed away, it was like I was needing more of that CFO type of person, but couldn't really afford to put that type of person on staff. And so I spoke to Dan and brought him on as our bookkeeper, which allowed me to eliminate some internal staff that wasn't providing the information I needed. And working with PCO Bookkeepers gave me a whole different education on managing through the numbers and what that looked like and how I could improve my business financially by working with them. So when it came time to look at the potential of selling, I went to Dan first and decided to go ahead and hire him. Now, I had sold other branches without engaging help, and didn't necessarily, worked out okay, but didn't necessarily protect me from a tax standpoint. And so when I sold this last location, which was much larger, I wanted to make sure that I was protected from a tax standpoint as much as the dollars received in the purchase. So I sold my branches in Florida, and when I sold them, I dealt with the buyer direct. Did not have any help or whatever, so I worked with my CPA, my attorney, and the buyer directly. But, they're managing their things and I'm trying to manage my things, and tax information was definitely not my strength. And my CPA helped, but not all CPAs are great negotiators. How's that? And so it was kind of as the buyer said, a win-win for both of us, but it was also potentially a lose-lose for both of us on a tax standpoint. And so when I worked with Dan and he handled this last sale, it was a win-win, not only from a financial standpoint, but he really protected me from a tax standpoint. And so it was a much bigger win. So my daughter was in the business, and my daughter actually ran the Greenville, South Carolina location. So the original plan with the Greenville, South Carolina location was that my daughter would actually end up with that particular location. So part of the reason for even considering selling to somebody else versus her was she started having interest in doing some other things. She started saying she wanted to work in some other industries or maybe have a different career. And I'm like, okay, wait a minute. The succession plan was for you to take over this business. And so is that still in place or not? And so we started looking at what our options were. And then in the middle of negotiations, we found out she was pregnant. And so that was very unexpected since her youngest was 5. And having that conversation with Dan, he was like, what? Because we were trying to negotiate. One of the things is any buyer would want one of us to stay on board, and they were really more interested in having her stay on board than me because she was running the day-to-day operations. And so they were really wanting to keep her, and she was wanting to stay. And so we were in the process of negotiating her comp plan and her employment agreement and all the things around her. And then, whoops, she's pregnant. And so, so that made it very interesting during the process. All the due diligence was handled by them, which was fantastic because I had to previously handle that myself when I sold to the other branches. And it's a lot of work. And I had to, when you're going through this process, you keep it very confidential. And so none of your team members know that you're going through this process because, they could go into a panic. It could end up spreading through the organization. I mean, there's just things that you just keep this really confidential, that this is going on and you're considering doing this, or you're down that road of doing this. So it's a lot of work on your part. And I had to do a lot of it after hours. I had to do a lot of it, on the weekends and at night, because I didn't want my office staff to say, "What are you doing? Why are you pulling those records? What are you looking at that for?" That kind of thing. And so they handled all of it. And that was just made it so easy. I had minimal work to do. I mean, they had questions for me that I had to answer, but I wasn't pulling the reports. I wasn't gathering all the information. I wasn't doing all the stuff. So it probably saved me well over 100 hours in gathering all that stuff, and many, many nights and many, many weekends from doing that. So that really, really made it worthwhile. Absolutely. So one of the things I learned as I matured in business and grew myself through coaching and other things is, there's things that you have really strong strengths in, and you need to focus on your strengths, and you need to have what I call who's to do things for you that's their strength. And so instead of, doing my own taxes, I hire a CPA. Instead of doing my own legal work, you hire an attorney. Well, instead of selling your own business, you hire an M&A specialist. We don't do our own marketing. We hired a marketing person. We had those professionals who get it and who know what to do, bring that on board. And they do it better because that's their specialty. And they save you so much time that it makes it worth the money spent, because I could then take my time and spend it on the things that I was really good at that brought us the most money during that as well. Absolutely. So when I first talked to Dan, it was like, okay, Dan, what are the numbers running? Like, our business, because he was doing our bookkeeping. And so it's like, our business, our numbers, how we operate, what do you think that will bring? And so, but because I didn't want to put any time to it or any thought really into it until we had that number, because if we were this far apart, it's not a good time to sell the house, right? If when you're not where that needs to be or whatever. So we discussed it, and I'm like, okay, you really think you can get that number? And he's like, oh yeah. And then he actually ended up exceeding that number. And one of the things he did was, we originally thought the big players would be the ones who were brought to the table. So he brought us a private equity firm that had not done any acquisitions yet. And they were wanting to get into the pest control industry. They had been in the veterinary industry and other industries, but they were looking to get in the pest control industry. And without Dan, we would have never been exposed to Rocket Pest. We would have never been exposed to this private equity firm. And when we were, it checked off, not only were we able to get top dollar, but it checked off a lot of boxes that we had on our list as well in protecting our employees. So, of course this is our retirement. Like this is retirement. We want to get the most out of our business, but we had employees that were like family, and we had employees that we really wanted taken care of. And we wanted to make sure that their jobs were protected and that they had opportunities to grow within their positions and within the company, and maybe bring them opportunities that we couldn't bring them as a smaller company. And so that was a big deal to us. And it actually weighed more than the dollars itself. Yes, we wanted the dollars to align, but we wanted our people to be taken care of and guaranteed employment and maybe have some better benefits and opportunities. So him bringing the private equity firm to us really checked all those boxes, and it really worked out well for us. Oh, it was great because they did it all. Like, we didn't have to do any. They did all the negotiating. They did all the due diligence. They did all the stuff to protect us. If there was a question, I just asked them and they handled it and got back to me. They set meetings. We met with the M&A team in person. They asked us a ton of questions. Dan and his team helped guide us through the answers, or helped with some of the answers that they knew that it's like, okay, what are we looking for here? And because of the experience they had with us as a company, by doing our bookkeeping as well, they were able to help guide us through that whole process. It went very smooth. I mean, we had, other than Laura being pregnant, that was our only real hiccup. You know, everything else went super smooth. And we had no real surprises or unforeseen things that created questions or created concerns or anything like that. The big thing was taking care of the employees and making sure they were all continued to be employed. That was huge. And Laura retaining employment and retaining her position in addition to employment, and helping through the transition, making sure, you know, because she helped calm the employees down. She helped make sure that all the employees knew that this was going to be good, and she was there and nobody was going anywhere and that type of thing. It was just a difference in me not being there and having a different boss to answer to. It was exciting. I mean, it's exciting I worked in the industry for over 30 years and knew nothing about pest control when I started in the industry. I mean, I was in computers. And so I went in to help computerize the books and then learned the industry from the ground up and really had a passion for it. I was really involved. I'm still involved in the industry. So I was very involved in it and that type of stuff. And then to see what you're able to do over the years, how you're able to personally develop and grow, and then take this business and grow it and develop people and develop your leaders and develop your team members and really create a culture that you just love, was very gratifying. And then to take that and hand it off to what you feel is the right people, and looking back, I definitely feel that it was very gratifying as well. And and it allowed me to move on and do something else that I was passionate about. And it has allowed, my daughter has since left that business, but it has allowed her to move on and do something that she was passionate about as well. So it ended up being a good win-win for us. I think Dan and his team, Dan obviously has a big understanding of the industry and the financial aspects of the industry as well. And he has such great knowledge of what you can do to improve your business and what you can do when it's time to exit your business and how to get the most out of that. And so I just thought he was the right person for the job based on my experience with him, because he operated as our CFO over the years. And so in all that I learned from him over the years, and then in all that he helped us with in the M&A, I just highly recommend using him and his team. I was not disappointed of it.